Philippians chapter 1, please.
Come on, buddy.
Philippians chapter 1.
Come on, Eric.
It's so cool, kind of the progression. I get to talk about having a loco vision today. That's what it was, right? Oh, okay, all right, my bad. Local vision. Local vision. All right. So I really appreciate Ron's lesson because before I can even have a vision about anything, I've got to be getting my strength from God. And I was filleted by that. I don't know about you, but I was just filleted at all the areas, especially my parenting, and that I'm doing it on my own strength, and I'm seeing the fruit of that, unfortunately. And I really appreciate Matt's lesson about having a personal vision and smart goals. That was encouraging to know that I can be like Jesus. And it's just really cool. We need to have our own vision before we can have a local vision. And sometimes they're really synonymous. Sometimes they're really closely linked together. But we need to have a vision for our campus. We need to have a vision for our city. Yeah. We need to have a vision for our neighborhood. We need to have a vision for our family.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Even if you're single and don't have a family yet, you still need to have a vision for what that's going to look like.
Right.
One of the things I heard a quote a long time ago that says, "Without God, we cannot, but without us, God will not." God has chosen to use us to be His heralds, His ambassadors, His viceroys to the world, His SEAL Team 6, if you will, to the dominion of darkness. And each one of us has an integral role to play that nobody else in this room can play.
Right.
If we don't step up and do it, nobody's going to do it.
Right.
Nobody's going to do it.
Come on, Eric.
Do you guys believe that?
Yeah.
Because if you believe that, this whole vision stuff is going to mean something completely different than, well, I'm just kind of a cog in the machine of Christ. No, you're not. You're not. It's not, we pull this cog out and then some, magical, guy's going to just put a new cog in and there we go. No, that cog goes away, gets stripped, it's done. That piece of the thing isn't going to happen.
Come on.
I had that belief at one time in my life. And over the course of the last several months specifically, but last several years, I've been getting it back more and more. I remember when I was in the college ministry in Long Beach State, back in the early 2000s, there was this guy named Marquise. He's one of my best friends. I went to his wedding a couple months ago. And I remember he went to ICMC, which was International Campus Ministers Conference, and I was next in line. I was like, oh, this is good, because he saw the first guy go, and then he saw the next guy go, and then the next year it was Marquise, and I'm like, oh, I'm right behind Marquise. And I'm like, this is it. And then everything happened. And if you don't know what everything happened, it does okay. You don't need to know, it's all right. It doesn't matter anymore. But everything happened, and there was no more ICMC. And so what I realized, I had a conversation with my brother-in-law, and he comes to me and says, hey man, and he didn't say these words exactly, but I keep kind of having this, get a haircut and get a real job. I was working in a bike shop at the time, and I was loving it. But he's like, well, I'm going to get you a real job, a real corporate job. And I started focusing on my career. And I started focusing on building a life. I moved to Orange County, started dating Ariel, we got married, and I started focusing on life. Now I got to tell you, I didn't shrink back from ministry. I didn't stop loving people. I didn't stop discipling people. I didn't. Okay? As much as I wanted to, but that part, the vision of what God could have done through me, of going into the full-time ministry and building a campus ministry, going on church plantings, whatever, that went away. Yeah. Or I got to say, it didn't necessarily go away. It just really got pushed down because there was no outlet for it. It wasn't going to happen. Right. It just wasn't going to happen. My wife and I then moved to Alaska. We married about 10 months, moved to Alaska, and that was my dream. I mean, if you went on it, not you, but if a sister went on a date with me, they'd be like, bro, what's your kingdom dream? And I'd be like, oh, you got a napkin? You got a pen? I got it. I'd draw a picture of Alaska, but like, I'm going to go here, we're going to do this, I'm going to baptize my brother, and he's going to do this, and I'm going to baptize my best friend Shane, and he's going to do this, and we're going to evangelize Alaska. And so going up to Alaska was like, this is a dream come true, especially with my wife, and things didn't go very well. Things did not go very well whatsoever. I know sometimes life doesn't give us what we expected. even as Christians. Right? John 16:33. Jesus said it himself, came out of his own mouth. He said, in this life you will have trouble. Just because I'm a Christian, just because I'm a disciple, doesn't mean I'm immune from trouble.
Right.
Just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean. And in Philippians chapter 1, go to verse 12. Paul says, now I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. Now what had happened to him is he was in prison in Rome, where he was writing this letter to the Philippians. And he says, as a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. Right. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. Now, when you read this in the original, we already know from Acts 20 that before he even went to Rome, he knew that it probably wasn't going to be a walk in the park. Because he had some guy come up to him and tie him up with his belt and say, this is how it's going to happen to you when you go to Rome. And he already told his Ephesian brothers, hey, I'm not going to see you again. Wow. He knew it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. But when you read this passage in particular, and a lot of commentators, when they dig into the original phraseology, I guess, of this couple paragraphs here, they get the sense that there was a frustration and an anxiety and kind of a stress that Paul was feeling about his predicament. Prior to, like in between verse 11 and verse 12, it's like this stress and this angst. Like think about if you were about ready to go on a road trip, driving your car across country to LA, and you can't find your wallet.
That's a problem.
It is gone. And I mean, you guys feeling that angst, right? It's like that over the gospel. What is God going to do when I'm in prison? How can God do anything if under my present circumstances? And then we shift to verse 12, and it's almost like there's this weight of stress and angst that is released. And there's this massive release, like he found the wallet underneath his driver's side seat. Okay? But there's this release of stress. And he's just like, but I want you to know that this has turned out for God's glory. He even says in Galatians, like, hey man, you Galatians, I wouldn't have even done anything around you if I didn't get sick. It's like I had to get sick because I was just going to be a stop-in. This was a waypoint in Galatia before I went somewhere else. And I got sick and I had to stick around for a while. Now we got a church there. And it's really crazy, this release. I mean, not only was this a relief to Paul, but it was just an amazing time where God did some crazy things. You guys remember in the movie Gladiator, it opens up, right, and they're in Germania? Yeah. Okay? And you kind of get this flash to Marcus Aurelius surrounded by those guys in black garb, right? Mm-hmm. They weren't just regular soldiers. They were the Praetorian Guard. They were the elite. I mean, think of Navy SEALs and Secret Service together, and you've got the Praetorian Guard right there. Okay? Now, ultimately, they became the downfall of the Roman Empire, but that's a whole other story. Okay? But when he says this, is that in verse 13, as a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard, he's not just talking about just soldiers or just like these guys, like, corrections officers, right? He's not talking about that. No offense to corrections officers or security guards, okay? He's talking about these elite soldiers. Not just the elite soldiers, but then he goes, and everyone else that's in that surrounding area. Right? I was talking to Jeremiah about this lesson, and and I think Kip might have said it in L.A., but he used the phrase "a captive audience," because he was captive. You get it, Joe? Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay. But because of his chains, God had a tremendous influence over some of the most elite soldiers in the known world at that time. Right. And then if you skim down to chapter 4, verse 22, he says the disciples were actually now part of Caesar's household. Now the scholars are a little off on whether or not some of that means that maybe some of Caesar's children or family were disciples, or just maybe servants or anything, okay? But still, the gospel reached Caesar's household.
Yeah.
Why? Because he went to prison.
Right.
Would it have happened else if that didn't happen?
Nope.
I don't know I don't know if it would. If it would, maybe God would have done something a little different.
Pretty awesome.
And I was talking with some friends the other week. Actually, it was a Wednesday. And one of them, he's not part of our fellowship. He's a disciple, but he's just not part of our fellowship. And he was asking the questions of, hey, well, so he's kind of on the fence of where he wants to go, where he wants to kind of fit in and grow roots. We had some really great conversations, but it made me think about, well, why am I part of this church? And at first I have the easy answers of, well, it was the friendships, and we had some really great times with the Hesses and hanging out with Jeremiah and Julie, and our wives really connected. Maybe it's just because it's the smaller size, and I really love kind of the smaller nature of being able to know people and know everybody's name and have that kind of friendship. But I think the reality was, deep down inside, it was the fact that there was hope.
Come on.
That the dreams that I had as a young disciple could still be realized.
Come on, man. That's awesome.
And that just gave me chills. Like I didn't really put that together until right now, because it's not happening elsewhere.
Right.
Yep.
It's not. I'm not seeing it anyway. And so the chances of me having that opportunity at 36 years old. Maybe if I was a 20-year-old college student cranking it out at DU or something, maybe. But at 36 years old, having the opportunity to go on a mission team, I don't know that would happen anywhere else but here.
Right.
And that, it psychs me. So we went to Alaska and it was terrible. It was terrible, and it wasn't like being in LA where if I didn't like what was going on in Orange County, I could just hop a couple of freeways up and go to, the South region or whatever. In Alaska, there's one church, that's it. In our particular realm of churches at that time. And so we had a question. We had a decision to make. Do I move? And we thought about it, moving to Denver. We came down here in 2012, right, to kind of spy out the land. But we weren't ready for that. It wasn't the right time. And so we went to a mainline Christian church there. We sat down with the pastor and his wife and said, hey, this is what we believe. Here are the first principles. This is what it's all about. This is how we're going to make disciples if we come here. You guys okay with that? We laid it out. We did not spare any kind of, and here's the churches that we're a part of. Here's the website. Go figure out. You don't want us if you don't want us. You know what I mean? And they were like, you know what, Eric and Ariel? We've been praying for a couple to come and teach us how to make disciples. I almost started crying. It was insane. And we had the time of our lives, and God worked a miracle for us to heal from our past wounds. Right, that passage in Timothy that 2 Timothy 4 that Ron talked about being alone and nobody, at my defense, nobody had our backs. Feeling that. And these guys really wrapped their arms around us, were really fathers and mothers in the faith to us. I mean, they were way older than anybody else in this room. Even older than Joe. What? Yeah. But it was so great. It was so awesome. And God did an amazing thing. Guys who had gotten baptized at 7 years old were getting rebaptized. Guys that realized, I never made this commitment of this radical sacrifice and total commitment. We're like, I need to do this. Just what the scriptures say. It was awesome, and God was glorified. In the midst of us having to go, this is all we got. This is all we got. We got nothing else. And then God really put on our hearts, we wanted to come back to the fellowship that we grew up in. And God led us to Denver. And God led Richard Enney to like my Facebook page. And was like, hey man, are you going to go on the mission team? And I'm like, don't we already have a church out there? Like, that's weird. And now he's living in my house. I mean, it's just crazy, the stuff that's happening. It's nuts. Go to Hebrews 10. Hebrews 10. Oh, 1 minute. Wow, I got 30 seconds. That's sweet. I got an extra 30 seconds. I just wasted it. Hebrews 10, verse 39. God, with Paul, worked amazing things in the midst of his trial. And through my story, I'm hoping that you see God can do amazing things in the midst of not ideal situations. Now, I never went to prison. I went to a holding cell in Santa Ana for a day, but I never went to prison. That's a whole nother story, whole nother sermon. Hebrews 10, verse 39. A lot of times, guys, we can get to this place when things are dark, when we're down, that goes, God's not going to do anything. Where's God? What's he going to do? And Paul here in Philippians lays it out and goes, guys, what could have happened in a bad way actually served to glorify the gospel and help people preach all the more. Hebrews 10, verse 39, it says, but we belong to those who shrink back. We do not belong, excuse me. Glad you caught that. It's testing you there. But we do not belong to those who shrink back and are destroyed, but those who have faith and are saved. In the midst of trying circumstances, you might not be in the right place that you feel like you're in the right place of. You might feel like Lakewood is not your place, that Boulder's not your place. But God has put you here.
Right.
And my challenge to you is grow where you're planted.
Amen.
Grow where God has put you. There's a reason why you're here.
That's right, Eric. Come on.
And that's where you need to be. Amen? Thank you.